Well, the risk score process definitely helped our company because we were able to see metrics for the first time. We kept data somewhat on different incidents. We had a little bit of background, but to get a comprehensive metro-sized view of where we stood and almost more importantly where we were perceived to stand by both our underwriters, our support units, as well as our managers and directors. The questionnaire process was highly helpful because folks were able to get an understanding of, well, do I know whether we do this process or do I know whether we should be performing this process? And then at that time, almost done in conjunction with each other, we were able to almost separate those two functionalities, which was knowing, being aware, and then and being informed. So some folks would say, well, I don't think we process that way, or I don't think we follow through with that. But then later on come back and determine their deficiencies. Now, if I came up and asked somebody, are you aware that this is going on? They're going to say, sure, yeah, I know that we're doing that. In a lot of organizations, no one wants to say, well, I wasn't aware. But with this system, it was almost a non-bias, if you will, asking these questions, inquiring about them, and then when I saw the results, it was like testing my students. I could come back and gain clarification or offer clarification and say, you had put that we didn't do this process. I'm here to inform you we do, and here's some background on it. And that way they're a little bit more proficient in understanding of what functionality we have, what abilities we have. So when we did the risk score process, it was like seeing a report card for the entire operation based on their understanding of how we mitigate and manage liability. So when I saw that process, right away that gave me a template. And I was able to almost run it like a checklist, see which folks were proficient, which people were learned in our processes, both pre-hire, post-hire, pre-incident, post-incident, and ultimately it was able to enable us to say, hey, we realize that there's some folks in our organization that have a great understanding of the 4PX process, and we have other folks in our organization that don't have quite an understanding. It's important for everyone to know. So we were able to almost assign buddies or partners in that learning process so that they could almost nudge each other and say, we do that. Here, let me show you, in an effort to evoke that cultural change that we're looking for. I really couldn't consider any companies that wouldn't benefit from the IOA Risk Score process. I think there's an opportunity to benefit from almost every organization. Every organization, every company is going to have liability. If they have over one employee, including themselves, they are a liability every day they step onto the property. Every day the operation is running, there is an opportunity for incident, accident, safety hazard, etc. There's folks who work in a bookstore and become injured. This, in my eyes, it really reduces that liability, reduces that risk, and more importantly, it educates. So folks that may work, maybe small business, maybe going into a new industry, someone that is over a certain operational aspect that deals with safety, there are areas of liability, areas of risk that they're not even privy to until they go, well, that does make sense. I could see someone injure themselves. I come into an organization before that there was just clerical and administrative work. Someone had picked up a ream of paper, turned the wrong way, and wrenched their back. So it was an example, an opportunity to say, wow, if someone can injure themselves with a single ream of paper, I'd say they could almost injure themselves with about anything. So at that point, it definitely, I feel, to me, it communicated, well, this is something that could probably be shared with everyone from an ice cream stand to a Fortune 500 company. So you could take, of course, obviously, anything that with slips, trips, falls, materials receiving, material handling, anytime there's I guess you would call it a blue collar or a position that requires a little bit more physicality than someone sitting behind a desk, it's more than valuable. They're able to identify those risks. Prevention is really the ultimate characteristic behind this, I find, to mitigate that liability and that risk. The risk score process works. I can 100% stand by and say that it has helped our organization. It's done more than help. In fact, we've found that there's been a reduction in our risk on a day-to-day basis. We actually are able to turn that culture, transform that culture into a safety-centric culture. We focus on our finances, we focus on our operation, we focus on our customers, but every orientation that we have, every new hire that comes into the organization gets at least a good talking to when it comes to safety. I'd highly recommend the risk score process to any organization across the board. I feel like, overall, once the assessment has been taken place, once the organization has been evaluated, especially from a non-biased view, because that's how the risk score works, it doesn't care who knows who or who's been here for how long. Liability is a liability, that any organization can take that and use it as a benefit, use it to their advantage, and it's almost universal and takes very little tweaking across all the industries. So everyone has a pre-hire process, everyone has a post-hire process, and if they don't, they should, and this will allow them to have somewhat of a template, to have more organization in that, to identify those liabilities. The risk score process helped our company immensely. Previously, we were up to our own checks and balances. We were able to have our underwriter or our on-site auditor, on-site evaluator give us some feedback and give us some information when it came to where we should improve. But it was sort of us, the sheep watching the sheep, so to speak, and we weren't necessarily given a non-biased perspective. When we got the risk score evaluator, we were able to say, well, here's enough line items, and we said something like personality assessments, I believe it was. We were able to look through everywhere from the medical health questionnaire to ADA compliance on our job descriptions to those personality assessments, to looking at whether our application was reviewed by our legal counsel. All of those things in a ever-changing society, an ever-changing work environment, Department of Labor with ever-changing regulations. We were able to say, wow, that regulation had changed and we didn't get the memo. But through the risk score process, it gave us a leg up to where if ever we're audited or if ever we're inspected by the Department of Labor or OSHA, etc., we're able to say, well, we're already ahead of you. We got that taken care of, and we've already mitigated that risk substantially through this process. It does work. It does help our organization, and it would help almost any organization across the board. It's universal in a way. I don't think that there's any organization, any company that could not benefit from using it. One thing that the risk score process did do for us was it was able to link financial implications to liability, to risk, to incidents. So when we were able to say, okay, we need to improve our elements of safety within our organization, some of our KDM or key decision makers need that sort of linkage. We need to be able to say, look, there was financial implications, there was cost savings, cost avoidances more importantly, in relatively to this process. We saved over $49,000 within the first month of usage. We were able to lower our liability, reduce our risk, mitigate that risk. If we can save even more dollars in the years coming, we're hopeful that as the risk score process evolves, as some of those improvements are made, as those changes are made, that will probably allow us to be more enabled to mitigate more risk. Okay, so that $49,000 savings was significant. It gave us the amount of fuel that we needed to communicate the importance of safety, to communicate the importance of liability reduction in our workforce. As we grow substantially, we bring it in as bedrock or as foundational to our organization. So we bring our people in under the assumption that when you follow this process, we have got every single nook and cranny covered. We've looked at everything from the onboarding process to the termination process to the employment process to try to say where are there opportunities for cost savings, where can we reduce this risk. As far as companies that would wait or want to delay on taking the risk score assessment, I don't know what the reason to delay would be unless that company is not intentional in saving money and in reducing risk. It's very simple. Almost a child could do it, take this assessment, and there's really just no reason or justification not to do the risk score assessment. Some of the results are painful. Some of those folks that maybe take the assessment, they may realize, wow, we're at more risk than we ever thought. When we had first taken it, we were at about a 65% compliance at best. When we realized that there's about 35% of our processes are still at high liability, still carry a great deal of risk, we're able to just focus in on that 35% and say, you know what, this is an area we can improve. We've got this covered. That's the good news, and that's the inspiring part. So I think that, you know, some folks may bring that on, some organizations may bring that on, and they may look at the results and say, wow, we've got 60% more risk than we really should just by following this checklist. Because it's binary, it's either a yes or a no. Do you have an attorney review your job descriptions, or do you have an attorney or legal counsel review your application process? There is no, well, we do sometimes, but you know, it was specific enough to where it gave a yes or a no. It was black and white, and we're able to overall come to conclude that score. And when that score comes about, we now have a metro-sized piece of data that we can try to move up, that we can try to improve day over day, year over year. As I address managers, directors, etc., you know, they say, oh God, here it goes, you know, what are we doing wrong? What aren't we doing that's safe enough as it could be? The risk score process allows me to deliver data on that. Okay, so I can actually show proof, you know, that, well, you're not aware. I can speak to a director or manager and say, you're not aware that we have this various process in place. And they say, well, yes, I am. I say, well, you answered no on the questionnaire, on the evaluation. And right there, it sort of gives very little wiggle room for any particular individual in the organization to say, well, I wasn't aware that we needed to be doing that. You know, it removes all excuse for anyone to not mitigate that risk or to not have a safety conscious sort of operational perspective. From the support staff to the actual folks, boots on the ground doing the operation, when they say, well, I know that there's an overseer here, I know there's someone that's evaluating these different aspects of our operation, I better be on point, I better have all my ducks in a row when it comes to this. I mean, we've done everything from, we've changed our criminal background check policy and protocol to improve that, to increase that. The department job descriptions, we thought that were all up to par, up to speed. When we sent them back to our legal counsel, we found there's some tweaks, there's some adjustments. We've been able to get into touch with our different former Department of Labor attorneys. Bureau of Labor Statistics has been very helpful in that, and to be able to link that savings, to link that risk so that there is no guesswork. We have a nice, comprehensive, clean, detailed summary to say these are those areas that if you improve upon or implement, you are likely to see a reduction and see more cost savings. $49,000 is quite significant kind of savings. Don't wait to do the risk score. By waiting, you don't know what incident or accident may occur, and you will be wanting to push the hands back on that clock, and it'll be too late. There's no sense in waiting. It's too simple to delay. It's a fantastic process. It has its value. It's able to link finances, link customer retention, employee retention, almost everything from a business continuity standpoint. You can project on it. You can assume that in the future, because our liability is reduced, we do not have to account for unforeseen risk, unforeseen issues, unforeseen incidents. We were apprehensive initially. The moment we brought it on, we saw the value.